It was the summer of 1867. 3 years after the Civil War and just a few months since Russia had sold Alaska to the United States. Fred Culver and another miner from the Cassiar Gold Rush were prospecting up the coast north of the Stickeen River. Leaving their skiff at the mouth of a stream, they panned up the creek to its headwaters and crossed over a mountain into a valley. Another creek ran through the valley and emptied into a beautiful bay. Fred and his partner set up a rocker and found a treasure of gold nuggets in the gravel of the creek. They mined for 2 weeks, and then Fred's partner was killed. Grabbing a bag of gold worth $1,500, Fred escaped over the mountain and down to Tidewater. The Hudson Bay Company's steamer found Culver adrift off Taku Harbor, south of Gastineau Channel, a few days later. The half-starved man was cared for and taken back to Victoria. He told his story of the lost rocker mine and showed his rescuers the gold as proof. But in spite of later efforts to relocate the lost rocker, the valley with its stream of gold was never found again. Or was it? In the 1870s, the Gastineau Channel was largely ignored by white men. The local Auk Indians, a tribe of the Tlingit Nation, called the area the place that had everything. The Auks had a village at Auk Bay and a summer fish camp at the mouth of Sintikahini, or Flounder Creek, the stream the white men would soon call Gold Creek. John Muir, the naturalist, made a canoe voyage down the Gastineau Channel in 1879.
The scenery all through the channel is magnificent, something like Yosemite Valley and its lofty avalanche-swept cliffs, especially on the mainland side, which are so steep few trees can find rooting.
Muir noted the mineralized character of the mainland and communicated his observations to the U.S. Navy in Sitka. The information interested a German mining engineer, a man named George Pilz. Pilz was setting up a stamp mill in Sitka to crush gold-bearing rock and process the gold. He needed high-grade ore and had grub-staked a number of prospectors to explore southeastern Alaska.
I sent the men out in pairs with some Indians with each pair. I paid all my men thus, the sum of $4 per day, and I furnished a complete outfit of choice goods and supplies. I had each of them sign a contract with me to locate any fair-looking prospects, and if they made 3 locations on a vein, I took a pick of 2 and gave them the 3rd location. The Indians I paid $1 a day with a ration of 3 hot tacks and 1 cup of seal oil.
Pilz also promised 200 Hudson Bay blankets and work for the tribe at $1 a day to any Indians who brought him valuable ore samples.
About this time, Old Cowie, the head chief of the Auks, a tribe on the Gastineau Channel, brought me some of the basin ores. Cowie brought these samples at various times during the year of 1879, and I told him to return in the spring of 1880, and I would go up the Gastineau Channel or send someone in my place.
In the summer of 1880, Pilz sent 2 former Cassiar miners with 3 months of supplies to the Gastineau Channel to investigate. Richard Harris and Joe Juneau, accompanied by 3 Indians, left Sitka on July 19, 1880. A month later, in Gastineau Channel, Harris made this note in his diary.
August 17. Run down the channel about 2 miles and discovered another creek running from the mainland and emptying into Gastineau Channel. We went up the creek about 1.5 miles and found in the bed of the creek, above what we now call Snowslide Gulch, about 10 cents to the pan of gravel. We named the creek Gold Creek, and it was the best prospect we'd found on the trip. We also found some very good float gold quartz on the creek. We carried out about 100 pounds of the quartz and panned out about $1.50 in gold. And Juneau and myself being satisfied there must be good gold deposits on the headwaters of the creek, concluded to return to Sitka as our provisions were running low.
When Harris and Juneau got back to Sitka, saying they had used up 3 months of supplies in 1 month and had barely explored the creek, Piltz was not amused.
They had a pitiful yarn to spin. At one time, they said they were trying to go up Gold Creek above Ock Village on the Gastineau Channel with Cowie and his Indians. They had left their boat on the beach near Ock Village and opposite the mouth of Gold Creek where the Ocks had their fishing camp. They claimed that one of the Indians had turned the boat loose. At another time, they claimed that the tide had pulled up their moorings and that the boat had drifted out toward Taku Inlet with everything aboard.
About the same time Harris and Juneau were making excuses to Piltz, Chief Cowie showed up in Sitka with more ore samples and a different story.
He said that once Harris and Juneau had landed at Ock Village with their outfit, they began immediately to trade off their outfit for hooch and squaws and had remained drunk for over 2 weeks. He said that they had used the boat to cross over to the Siwash village opposite to Gold Creek, and one night while they were drunk, they had left it untied and it had been taken out by the tide and carried toward Taku Inlet. He said there was nothing in the boat at the time it had drifted away.
In spite of this, Piltz sent Harris and Juneau off to Gastineau Channel again because he said he had no one else to send. This time, Chief Cowie traveled back with them to make sure they found the gold. Cowie led them to the headwaters of Sintakahini, to the valley the Ocks called Sun Cave.
On Sunday, October 3, we packed one Indian, and Juneau and myself and the Indians started for the headwaters of Gold Creek and the tributaries. We couldn't follow the creek as the brush was too compact, and 1 or 2 canyons we couldn't get around. Our only show was to climb the mountain. We climbed up Snowslide Gulch and worked our way to the summit of the mountain. After reaching the summit, we obtained a beautiful view of what is now called Silverbow Basin, named after the Silverbow mines in Montana, and the gulch I named from the fact that it contained the most gold quartz I have ever seen in one gulch. We followed the gulch down from the mountain into the basin, and it was a beautiful sight to see the large pieces of quartz. Before we got to the mouth of the gulch, we examined several quartz lodes that cropped out on the edge of the gulch, and I broke some with a hammer, and Juneau and myself could hardly believe our eyes. We knew it was gold, but so much, and not in particles, streaks running through the rock, and little lumps as large as peas or beans. We then made our camp for the night down in Silverbow Basin, and early next morning, while Juneau and the Indian were cooking breakfast, I took the gold pan, pick and shovel, and panned 4 pans, and got $1.20 to $1.30 to the pan.
Today, that $1.20 worth of gold would equal about $21 a pan.
We went to staking and measuring the placer mines in the gulch.
The next day, Harris established the Harris Mining District.
I wrote out a code of local laws given the size of placer claims and the number of claims each miner could hold, and also quartz claims. We were then governed by military and naval laws. We prospected around Silverbow Basin until the 18th of October and had our Indians pack out to the beach on saltwater about 1,000 pounds of gold quartz rock, the richest I ever seen.
On October 18, 1880, exactly 13 years after the transfer of Alaska to America, Harris and Juneau claimed a 160-acre town site along Gastineau Channel. The southwest corner was a blazed tree just above the high tide line near what is now the corner of Front and Franklin Streets. They named the town Harrisburg. When Harris and Juneau returned to Sitka with 1,000 pounds of ore worth $15,000, the rush was on. A week later, the Navy escorted 10 miners, including Juneau, Harris, and George Piltz, back to the gold town. On the following day, the steamer Favorite left Sitka for Harrisburg, carrying supplies and 20 more miners. More claims were recorded in the valleys of Gold Creek, and lots were staked along the beach they named Miners Cove, the present site of downtown Juneau. John Olds, one of the newcomers from Sitka, recalled,
We landed our canoe at the foot of Seward Street. It commenced blowing and snowing, and we could not keep a fire going, nor could we keep our tent up.
Billy Meehan and another group of miners from Sitka camped on an island off what is now Douglas. The next morning, Meehan hiked down the beach to look for colors.
Boys, come here, we've got it. Why, it's almost a ready bullion.
They named the stream Ready Bullion Creek, and the gold panned by Meehan was just the first of a bonanza worth millions. Across the channel, 12 to 15 cabins were built that winter.
We built our cabin back where the Charles Goldstein store now is located. In 3 days, we had the walls and the roof on. The building was 12 by 14 feet. We sort of kept open house and a good fire, and the place became known as the Flag of All Nations.
John Old's partner, Pat McGlinchey, said of that winter,
We lived on snowballs and pepper.
miners' meetings were held in the Flag of All Nations to reorganize the new mining district. A miners' meeting was rudimentary democracy as practiced on the frontier. Each man had a vote and could call a meeting. Judgment on a grievance, crime, or claim dispute was decided by vote after each side had made its case. On February 10, 1881, a miners' meeting voted to rename Harrisburg Rockwell in honor of Lieutenant Commander Charles Rockwell, U.S. Navy. Lieutenant Commander Rockwell had helped maintain law and order in the fledgling community, and since there was no police force, Rockwell was ordered in May by Commander Henry Glass in Sitka to build a garrison on what is now Telephone Hill. Glass, being the commanding naval officer in Alaska, was the highest government official in the territory. He was concerned that 450 Auk and Taku Indians lived in the mining camp alongside 150 whites. He considered this a potentially explosive situation. The Indians were the backbone of the camp's labor market. They hauled wood and supplies from the beach to the basin for $1 a day. Glass convinced Chief Cowie to move his people away from the camp to the west side of Telephone Hill. He also encouraged the miners to take up a collection to pay the Indians to move. Chief Cowie was given skookum papers and appointed Indian policemen with a salary of $10 a month and asked to keep law and order among his people. Lieutenant Commander Rockwell, accompanied by 5 sailors and 12 Marines, started to build a garrison on Telephone Hill, which enabled them to keep an eye on both the mining camp and the new village. In the meantime, a lot of miners were mad at Harris for staking claims for men who weren't on site when the claims were staked.
That didn't go in the Cassiar, and it shouldn't go here.
Joe Juneau liked to buy drinks for his friends, and after tilting a few, he'd lament that everything was named after Harris and nothing after him. In December of 1881, a miners' meeting was called and a good majority voted to change the town's name again, this time to Juneau City. The Postal Department made the change but dropped the city from the name, thereby officially making the town Juneau. In 1882, Juneau was just another placer camp, not a place to get rich quick. Once the placer gold was panned out, many gold camps in the West vanished into history. What made Juneau survive and grow were the huge deposits of lode and vein gold. In the summer of '82, a 5-stamp mill was set up at Ebner Falls to crush and process the lode gold in the basin. About the same time, John Treadwell built a 5-stamp mill on Paris Creek near Ready Bullion Beach over on Douglas Island. The stamp mills pulverized the ore, and the crushed rock was then processed with mercury to separate the gold from the waste rock. The 5-stamp mills proved that mining in Juneau could be profitable if done on a large scale. John Treadwell installed a 120-stamp mill at Paris Creek in 1883. By 1885, it was milling 100 tons of ore each day. Treadwell hired Chinese laborers who would work for less than whites. This outraged the white miners who demanded that Treadwell fire the Chinese. Treadwell refused, and the next day 100 angry men went to Douglas and forced 80 Chinese onto boats bound for Wrangell. Only one Chinese, China Joe, was allowed to stay. China Joe had a bakery in Juneau and was a friend to many white residents and to the children. Large-scale mining continued to grow in the Juneau Gold Belt, and the town grew with it. Within a decade of the town's founding, the Auk Indians had left their village on the shore of Auk Bay and moved to Juneau. The original people of the place that had everything had developed new wants that required cash-paying jobs to satisfy. Since Juneau was built on a mountainside lapped by the sea, there was little flat land. The beach ran along what is now South Franklin Street, Front Street, and Willoughby Avenue. To expand, pilings had to be driven out from the beach and buildings set atop the pilings. South Franklin, Front Street, and Willoughby Avenue were all built on pilings. At low tide, kids used to gather coins that had fallen through the cracks in the plank streets. But in the late 1920s, the streets were filled in with waste rock from the mines, ending the kids' El Dorado. Open pit mining, such as the Treadwell Glory Hole, was the main method of mining until 1896. The Glory Hole was 1,700 feet long, 420 feet across, and 450 feet deep. The Treadwell worked day and night, 363 days a year. Christmas and the 4th of July as holidays. The miners worked 8-hour shifts, 7 days a week. The Treadwell Club, provided by the mine for the employees, offered a gymnasium and a swimming pool, plus a bowling alley, a billiard and pool room equipped with 8 tables, and a photographer's darkroom. A reading room and library offered 150 magazines and newspapers, writing materials, and 15,000 volumes of classics, fiction, poetry, and history. There was also a barber shop, a Turkish bath, and an auditorium for plays, dances, and vaudeville performances. In 1910, a Treadwell miner averaged $100 a month. $29.50 was deducted from his pay for meals, housing, medical services, and club membership. A miner's wife remembers her arrival at Treadwell in 1913.
When the Jefferson landed, we were soon off with our baggage, walking up a busy dock, over train tracks, and amid all manner of activity. I thought I had never heard so much noise going on when we reached the street. I heard this great roar and was told it was the stamp mills, which never stopped, day or night, year in and out. Overhead, I saw tracks with little cars full of ore just running along, going to the big stamp mill. There was a big store and the superintendent's house and lots of lights all over. Besides the store, there was a large boarding house for single men and rows of rooming houses. Barracks is more like it. Just beyond the store was the clubhouse, also an auditorium where picture shows were given. On summer days, there were band concerts with the band marching down the street playing as they went. A little boat made regular trips back and forth between Douglas and Juneau. The one big social event of the year was the Firemen's Ball. It was a real event. The decorations were beautiful, and the dresses were what you might have seen at a governor's ball. The midnight supper was served in the big dining hall. Here again were decorations and food of all kinds, cold meats, breads, pickles, all manners of pastry, free to all. This was Treadwell in its heyday before the cave-in, which was the life of activity we had seen.
On April 20th, 1917, boards broke away from the swimming pool as the earth began to sink. A mine geologist, Livingston Wernicke, was there.
I took the cage back to the 1,250-foot level where I had inspected the first indications of water. I got less than 400 feet from the shaft when I felt fresh incoming air and heard a distant rumble in the 700-foot mine. I ran back to the shaft in time to see the cage going to the surface and yelled to the cager, "Hurry back! The mine is caving!" He returned shortly, but went to the 1,600-foot level to get Wayland and Homer.
Wait a minute!
The cage returned in 3 to 4 minutes, but in the meantime, the rumble had become a roar, and rocks were dropping from the back and sides of the footwall drift and the 1,250-foot level station. Shortly after leaving the 1,250-foot level, we met a sheet of rock, water, and sand. At the 900-foot level, the pump tender dove through a 3 or 4 inch sheet of water into the cave. After giving 3 bells with difficulty, we were hoisted rapidly to somewhere between the 600 and 400-foot levels, above the flood of water, when we suddenly stopped and dropped back 20 to 30 feet with all the sensation of the line having parted and the dogs catching as we fell. Our lights were out, the burners full of sand and water, everything wet. We tried to light matches but failed. About 5 minutes we were held in suspense, not knowing what to expect, when the cage began to slowly move upward. We were slowly hoisted, and about 1:30 a.m., 4 badly frightened men stepped from the cage.
The Treadwell, Mexican, and 700-foot mines were completely flooded. Mules, horses, and machinery lost. The Ready Bullion mine was saved by 3 concrete bulkheads and continued working until 1922, when the ore became too lean. These mines produced $67 million in gold, and at their peak employed 2,000 men. Across the channel in Silver Bow Basin, the worked-out placer claims had been consolidated into the Alaska Perseverance Mining Company to do hard rock mining. The Perseverance erected a 100-stamp mill in the basin. Perseverance, owned by British investors, had to be reorganized to operate on American soil. The Alaska Gastineau Mining Company was created, and it merged with the Perseverance. The English could still hold shares, but in an American company. Bart Thane, a young promoter, completed the reorganization and devised a bold plan to link the Perseverance to the new Alaska Gastineau by building a tunnel from Silver Bow Basin to the new mill at Sheep Creek. In 1916, the Gastineau could crush 12,000 tons of ore per day. But by 1921, it had run out of decent ore and had to close down. 7 years later, 49 years old, Thane died in New York, a broken man. Some of the technological achievements of Thane's mine helped the Alaska Juneau mine to succeed. The AJ mill was built above downtown Juneau. Frederick Bradley, a renowned mining engineer and the former manager of the Treadwell, built a 50-stamp pilot mill on the site in 1913. With financial help from Bernard Baruch, he built the new AJ mill in 1916. It was a ball mill designed to process 8,000 tons of ore per day. The AJ operated until 1944 and was the economic heartbeat of Juneau. World War II changed all that. The war had caused labor shortages, and the price of gold was frozen at $35 an ounce by the government. This and labor strikes made the mine unfeasible. In 1944, the last great Juneau gold mine shut down. Some of the most important men in Juneau's golden history died poor. Richard Harris worked for various mining companies in Juneau until his health failed. In 1905, he became blind and almost helpless. He died broke in a Portland sanitarium in 1907. Joe Juneau spent his gold about as fast as he found it. Joe headed for the Yukon in 1894 and died in Dawson during the Klondike Gold Rush in 1899. His last wish was to be buried in the city that bore his name. John Olds took up a collection, and Joe's remains were brought back to Juneau and buried. Chief Cowie, who brought so much change to his people, died at age 75. He was then cremated in the Tlingit tradition on the outskirts of the town he and his tribe helped create. The Lost Rocker mine was never rediscovered. And now that the gold has been mined from the valley of the Sun Cave, it probably never will be.